Behind every royal headline, there's a hidden truth. The world is watching the crown once again. This is Golden Crown Insider, where royal secrets become headlines. Today we are taking you inside one of the most quietly significant royal events of 2026. Not a coronation, not a state visit, not a nationally televised ceremony watched by hundreds of millions. A small, private, intimate wedding in the English countryside. All Saints Church, Kemble, Gloucestershire. Saturday the 6th of June. Roses petals in the rain. A king with cancer in the front pew. And a guest list that, when you read it carefully, when you understand who is on it and who is not, tells you more about the current state of this royal family than almost anything else that has happened this year. The wedding of Peter Phillips and Harriet Sperling. And the story of King Charles, a man managing cancer, managing family crisis, managing the weight of an entire monarchy, choosing to show up. For one afternoon in the Cotswolds. For his nephew. For the family that, despite everything, he is still trying to hold together. Subscribe right now if you are new here. Hit that bell. Because this story has layers, and today Golden Crown Insider is taking you through every single one of them. Let's start with Peter Phillips himself. Because to understand why this wedding matters, you need to understand who Peter is within this family, and why his relationship with King Charles carries a particular weight. Peter Phillips is Princess Anne's only son. He is the eldest grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth II. He is 48 years old. He holds no royal title. Princess Anne deliberately chose not to give her children titles, wanting them to have lives as normal as possible outside the royal spotlight. And he undertakes no official royal duties. Hello? No title. No official duties. The eldest grandchild of the late Queen, the person who should, in terms of birth order among the grandchildren, carry the most weight in that generation of the family, living a private life. Known to royal watchers, but not a daily fixture in the headlines. Peter shared an especially close bond with the late Queen Elizabeth throughout her reign. Sources described him as one of her favorites among the grandchildren, a warm, grounded presence who represented exactly what Anne had hoped for when she made the decision to raise her children outside the formal royal framework. Hello? A favorite of the late Queen. That is not a small thing in this family. And it tells you something important about why Charles, despite the chaos surrounding him on every other front, made it a priority to be in that church on June 6th. Because Peter is not just Anne's son, he is a living connection to Elizabeth, to the grandmother whose death marked the beginning of everything Charles's reign has had to navigate. And being present at the most important day of Peter's personal life was, in its own quiet way, an act of continuity. A king saying, the family that Elizabeth built is still here, still celebrating, still showing up for each other. The wedding took place at All Saints Church in Kemble, near Cirencester, about 2 hours from London. Peter married Harriet Sperling, a pediatric NHS nurse and freelance writer described as a devout Christian who quickly won over the nation after going public with Peter in 2024. The couple announced their engagement in August 2025. Yahoo, an NHS nurse, a pediatric nurse, someone who spends her working life caring for sick children, and a freelance writer with a deep Christian faith. In an era when every royal wedding generates debates about status and backgrounds and whether certain people are suitable for the family, Harriet Sperling arrived into the royal world and was, by almost universal account, immediately beloved. This was a second wedding for both Peter and Harriet. Peter shares 2 daughters with his former wife Autumn Kelly, Savannah, 15, and Isla, 14. Harriet is mother to Georgina, 13, who she shares with her ex-husband. All 3 girls served as bridesmaids on the day. A beautiful, deliberate, publicly visible statement about what this new blended family is choosing to be. Yahoo, 3 teenage daughters. From 3 separate lives. Walking into a church together as bridesmaids. That image. 3 girls who did not choose any of this, who came from different families and different stories, choosing to stand together on the most important day of their parents' lives, is one of the most quietly moving details of the entire occasion. Harriet's wedding dress was designed by British designer Amelia Wickstead, a custom gown blending traditional and modern elements, the result of months of planning and hundreds of hours of handwork. It featured a square-neck column underdress, a delicate lace-over jacket fitted at the waist, and a dramatic 3-meter train. She arrived at the church wearing the Pragnell family tiara. Yahoo, months of planning, hundreds of hours of handwork, a family tiara, for a wedding that was deliberately kept small and private. That is a level of craftsmanship and care that signals something important. This was not a low-key occasion dressed up as a wedding. It was a genuine celebration, intentionally intimate, but absolutely beautiful. The reception was held at Gatcombe Park, Princess Anne's Gloucestershire estate, and the family home most closely associated with Peter Phillips's childhood. A poignant choice. The place he grew up. The place he knows most deeply. The place that, for all its royal associations, has always been more about horses and countryside and family than about ceremony and protocol. Hello. Now let's talk about who was there. Because the guest list tells a story that is just as revealing as the wedding itself. Among those attending were King Charles and Queen Camilla, Prince William and Princess Catherine, Princess and her husband Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence, Zara and Mike Tyndall, Prince Edward and Sophie Duchess of Edinburgh, Princess Beatrice, and Princess Eugenie. Reader's Digest read that list carefully. The working royals, the family inner circle, the people who represent the institution in its current form, gathered in a Cotswolds church for a private family occasion that the outside world was invited to observe only from a respectful distance. It is a powerful list, and its power comes partly from what it includes, the king with cancer attending his nephew's wedding, and partly from what it does not include. Harry was not there. As we covered in our previous video, he was not invited, and his absence from that church, while the rest of the family gathered, is a silence that speaks as loudly as anything said at the altar. But let's focus on Charles. Because Charles's presence at this wedding, the decision to be there, the effort it required, the meaning it carried, is the heart of today's story. King Charles and Queen Camilla attended the wedding knowing they would only be able to stay for the ceremony itself. They had a prior commitment. The Epsom Derby, Britain's most famous horse race, held the same afternoon over 100 miles away in Surrey. After seeing Peter and Harriet exchange vows, they would need to race off immediately to Epsom. Woman and home a king with cancer, who flew back from a historic state visit to the United States less than a month earlier, who is managing ongoing cancer treatment, who is running a monarchy through one of its most turbulent periods, who has a brother under criminal investigation and a son living in California. That man, on a Saturday afternoon in June, got in a car, drove 2 hours to a village church in Gloucestershire, sat in the front pew, watched his nephew get married, and then immediately got back in the car for another 100 miles to present a trophy at a horse race. Because both things mattered. The wedding mattered, and the Derby mattered, not as a frivolous leisure commitment, but as a continuation of a tradition that his mother kept for decades and that Charles, since becoming king, has maintained as a statement of continuity and royal presence. Since becoming king, Charles has sought to maintain the connection with horse racing that defined his mother's life. Alongside Camilla, he inherited the late Queen's racing and breeding operation. He attended the Derby Festival in 2024 to watch his own filly contest the Oaks. At this year's Epsom Derby, the King and Queen presented the trophy to jockey Ronan Whalen for the winning horse Christmas Day. Woman and home two events. One afternoon, one man managing cancer, doing both. Because being king, Charles's version of being king, means showing up for the family and for the institution simultaneously. Always. Even when it requires driving 200 miles and squeezing both into a single afternoon. There is something in that image, a king in a morning suit, still in his wedding attire, presenting a trophy at a horse race while his nephew and new bride begin their reception at Gatcombe. That tells you more about Charles's understanding of his role than any formal statement ever could. Now let's talk about what this wedding means for the monarchy more broadly. Because Peter Phillips's wedding is not just a family occasion. It is a moment, small but significant, in the ongoing story of what the royal family is becoming. Peter is 19th in line to the throne. He holds no title and undertakes no official duties. Yet the king came to his wedding. The future king came to his wedding. The Princess of Wales came to his wedding. The full senior royal apparatus showed up for a private ceremony in a Cotswolds village for a man who, by every formal measure, exists at the absolute periphery of the royal institution. Hello? That decision, to show up fully, to treat Peter's wedding as genuinely important rather than as a peripheral family event, is a statement about what Charles believes the monarchy should be. Not just a formal institution, not just a collection of working royals performing constitutional functions. A family, a real one, with relationships that go beyond titles and duties and official calendars. Charles has spoken about this throughout his reign. About wanting the monarchy to feel human. about wanting the crown to represent not just tradition, but genuine connection to ordinary life. An NHS nurse marrying the Queen's eldest grandson in a country church with teenage bridesmaids, with umbrellas against the June rain and rose petals on the wet Cotswold stones, is exactly the kind of moment that makes that aspiration real. And here is the detail that carries the most emotional weight of all. The one person whose presence hung over the entire day without being there. Peter shared an especially close bond with the late Queen Elizabeth, and the occasion carried a poignant note for the entire royal family. One presence, in particular, was deeply missed. The grandmother who would have sat in that front pew, who would have watched her eldest grandchild exchange vows and felt, perhaps, something of the satisfaction of a life well built, who is absent from every royal occasion now, but whose shadow, in the most loving sense, falls across all of them. Hello, Queen Elizabeth, who loved Peter especially, who watched him grow up at Gatcombe Park, who knew his daughters by name, who attended his first wedding to Autumn Kelly in 2008, who was the gravitational center of a family that is now trying, with enormous effort and with genuine love, to hold itself together without her. Charles sat in that church on June 6th as the king, but he also sat there as someone who grew up in the same family Peter did, who shared the same grandmother, who knows what Gatcombe Park means and what All Saints Church in Kemble means and what it costs to show up with cancer and a 100-mile journey to the Derby still ahead of you, and show up anyway. Because showing up, for Charles, has always been the definition of duty, not in the cold, institutional sense that his father Philip embodied, but in a warmer, more personal way that his mother modeled throughout her reign. The idea that presence matters. That being physically there, in the church, in the rain, with rose petals and umbrellas and a blended family of teenage girls in bridesmaid dresses, is not a ceremonial obligation. It is love, expressed in the only language the royal family has always truly spoken. After the ceremony, the newlyweds emerged from the church to be showered with rose petals as rain fell. Family and friends sheltered beneath umbrellas. The king and queen smiled. And then, as the guests began making their way to the reception at Gatcombe Park, Charles and Camilla got back in their car. 100 miles to Epsom. Another commitment. Another piece of a life lived entirely in service of something larger than themselves. Reader's Digest: that is the hidden truth about King Charles at Peter Phillips's wedding. Not a grand statement. Not a constitutional gesture. Just a man, fighting cancer, carrying a monarchy, navigating a family that is simultaneously closer and more fractured than it has ever been, who drove 2 hours to a village church in the Cotswolds on a rainy Saturday afternoon, because his nephew was getting married, because the late Queen would have been there, because that is what this family, beneath everything, still is. And because for all the headlines about Andrew's arrest and Harry's absence and Camilla's tensions and William's plans, sometimes the truest royal story is simply the king in the front pew, present, showing up, as he always has, as he always will. If this video moved you, give it a thumbs up right now. Share it with someone who follows the royals. And if you are not yet subscribed to Golden Crown Insider, do it now. Every single day, we bring you the truth behind the royal headlines, the ones that reveal what this family is truly carrying beneath the crown. This is Golden Crown Insider, and we will see you in the next one.